Now, this article from Free Thought Project, from Asia to the Middle East, U.S. bombs are a failed foreign policy choice. I didn't write it down. I meant to look the guy up, but there was a guy who, he was not in the military, but he started looking at our wars and this whole idea of air power, projecting this and how we're going to win. And that really is fundamentally one of the from the military standpoint, that is the lie, the misjudgment that has caused us to lose so many of these wars. But then, of course, there's also a moral aspect of that, and a moral aspect of whether or not we are going to be lied into a war, whether or not we are the aggressors. This article from Free Thought Project, from Asia to the Middle East, U.S. bombs are a failed foreign policy choice. The only reliable products of U.S. air power are devastated civilian populations and suppression of internal movements. And I'm surprised that they didn't quote this guy. And I meant to look him up. I've forgotten his name right now. But he made a very detailed study of this, and he started getting, he just kind of fell into it. It's kind of interesting how he got involved in it. He was a different kind of analyst, but he just started looking at the results of these types of bombing campaigns. And of course, he came to the conclusion that many of us can see, that what this does is it galvanizes the civilian population behind even a bad leader. The U.S.-Israeli war in Iran opened not with a declaration, not with diplomacy exhausted, but with airstrikes. Among the first confirmed casualties, of course, a few hundred, more than 100 school children killed in a strike on the elementary school in southern Iran. Within a month, 850 U.S.-made Tomahawk missiles were used to strike Iran. Of course, Trump and Hegseth lied about that. They said, that's not us. And then when people point out, well, that's a Tomahawk. Well, Iran's got Tomahawks. No way. No way Iran's got. Finally, after months of lying, the Pentagon has admitted the truth. They did it. Oh, we made a mistake. We won't do it again. Just like the pandemic nonsense. So Trump has delivered on his promise to bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages, targeting bridges, pharmaceutical and steel plants, civilian infrastructure like schools and hospitals. The civilian oil infrastructure in Tehran has been targeted, engulfing a city of 10 million people in toxic black rain. Thousands of Iranian and Lebanese have been killed, and hundreds of thousands of workers have lost their jobs as factories and basic infrastructure have been destroyed. Washington calls this national security. The historical record calls it something else entirely. For more than 75 years, the U.S. has reached for air power as its preferred instrument of foreign policy. I would say along with coups and assassinations, because we are a country that is now governed by the CIA and the intelligence agencies, as well as influence from Israel. The illusion that enough bombs dropped with enough precision can produce the outcomes that diplomacy did not. And go back to Korea and the Korean War. As a Korean American, Kathy Choi of Women Cross DMZ knows this history personally. From 1950 to 53, during the Korean War, U.S. forces dropped 635 tons of bombs, 32,000 tons of napalm, burning 80% of North Korean cities to the ground. 1 year into the war, Major General Emmett O'Donnell testified to the Senate, there aren't any more targets in Korea. More than 4 million people were killed. The overwhelming majority of them, civilians. 73 years later, the war has only ended in a ceasefire, not even in a treaty, and the peninsula has remained in a stalemate ever since. So with all of those bombs, with all of that civilian death, they couldn't achieve even a treaty, let alone victory. The Korean War inaugurated the U.S. military-industrial complex. It quadrupled the Pentagon's budget in just 3 years. It set a course from which Washington has never turned back. And, I think we look at a lot of presidents. We look at Woodrow Wilson, and he is condemned, rightfully so, for lying us into World War I, promising we're not going to get into war and so forth, dragging us into that, using Edward Bernays to propagandize the American population, who then went on to propagandize Americans with Madison Avenue sales ads and things like that. But Truman, who's typically only remembered for Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and people try to excuse what he did there. I don't think there's any excuse for it. I used to buy that narrative. Oh, well, they did that to end the war. Well, if you stop and think about it critically, whether or not that was true, wouldn't it be even more effective to use the nuclear bombs against, they always say, well, we didn't want to spend all of the soldiers' lives going from island to island to clear out these Japanese. Don't you think if they if the bomb caused them to surrender, don't you think that they could just do that on the islands and focus on the combatants rather than on non-combatants? But of course, many people have pointed out that it was Russia that had taken a break after the war in Europe had ended, but was now massing forces to join with their military. That was really the deciding factor rather than the bombing of the civilian population. Nevertheless, it's not just that he did. It was Truman who created the national security state. It was Truman who created these secret agencies, the CIA, and of course the NSA was created by an executive order. And these are the people, this is the form of government where you're not allowed to know anything. He created this black box, this black government of secrecy, of wars and coups and assassinations. All that. This is a creature of Harry Truman. He should be remembered for that. And he deserves a special place in history and a special place in hell. That's what we should remember. We should have a memorial day for the presidents and what they have done to our country and the people that they have killed, including the military. Danny Hendrickson, an advocacy group called Legacies of War, went to Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. From 1964 to 73, U.S. pilots flew 580,000 bombing missions over Laos alone, the equivalent of a plane load of bombs every 8 minutes around the clock for 9 years straight. An estimated 80 million unexploded cluster munitions remain in the soil. Less than 10% of them have been cleared. During her visit in 2025, 5 boys who were digging for crabs struck a cluster munition. One was completely blinded, another lost his hand. She visited a 4th grade classroom where the children asked her, "Why did the U.S. drop the bombs? Why is it taking so long to clean them up? Do you think Laos will ever be bomb-free?" The war for them is not over. Why do we not memorialize things like this? It's all about flag waving and putting wreaths on the graves of Americans who have been killed over these useless policies, over these evil policies. Afghanistan, for 2 decades of bombing, produced not stability, but the conditions for just the opposite. One person living there said, the war was started with the U.S. saying we need to free the Afghan people. And the war was ended by saying, your freedom is now over. They handed power back to the very people that they were bombing, that they were supposed to have defeated. And Iraq followed the same arc. The 2003 invasion of Iraq didn't find any weapons of mass destruction, of course, because they never existed. And it was a lie. And Trump called it out as a lie when he was a candidate in 2016. This is why we had some hope for him. I mean, even Julian Assange, who the Trump administration and Mike Pompeo tried to kill, he said, well, we know what Hillary Clinton is. We know she's a warmonger. We know she's a criminal. Do we know, especially now in this second term, there is absolutely no question that Trump is a criminal. There's no question that he's a warmonger. So here we are. What they found was that Iraq itself proceeded to, they said, instead of finding the weapons of mass destruction, what they found was Iraq. And they proceeded to destroy it. Perhaps 1 million dead, millions more displaced. Well, airstrikes cannot weaken a government sufficiently to produce regime change. And they quote someone else. Farah Jan writes this from the University of Pennsylvania. But again, the best case made for this is the guy whose name I can't remember. I forgot to look up. Decades of research on the rally around the flag effect. You see, this is the rally around the flag effect. The tendency of populations to unite behind their government when attacked by a foreign power confirms that external attacks fuse regime and nation, even when the citizens despise their leaders. It does not topple governments, it consolidates them. And didn't we see this in Iran? You know, we had these Mossad-generated, for the most part, protests in Iran. I don't know how much of that was organic. I don't know how much of that was astroturf by, foreign espionage. Nevertheless, whatever it was, that stopped when the U.S. started bombing. And the fantasy that they told themselves, which, again, Ratcliffe of the CIA, kudos to him for saying what the Israelis, what Netanyahu and the CIA and the Mossad chief told you, is farcical. It's farcical. It is a fantasy that they're selling you. The fantasy was that there were riots in the streets. How much of that was fomented by them, we don't know. And that with those riots in the streets, once the bombing started, people were going to attack their own government. That has never happened. It didn't happen when the Nazis attacked London. It didn't happen when the Allies responded and attacked Dresden. That has never happened. Instead, what happens, people turn to their government to protect them from this aggression that is outside. And so that's exactly what happened in Iran. It was predictable. We'd seen it throughout history over and over again. What happened was when they started bombing the infrastructure, remember when Trump said, I'm going to bomb you back into the Stone Ages? Remember, that was when the people took to the streets. That was when the people started surrounding the infrastructure, using themselves voluntarily as shields. And I saw some clueless MAGA propagandists and some of the cult members who bought into it saying, oh, look at how horrible this is. They didn't make anybody do that. These are people saying, we're going to out you as ruthless murderers if you try to destroy our infrastructure. And they put their lives on the line to stand there and to say, we're going to encircle this. If you blow up this bridge, if you blow up this factory, if you destroy our lives, that way you might as well kill us. And you're going to be seen as dropping a bomb on civilians who are trying to protect this infrastructure with their bodies. That's what happened. It did not create an uprising. It never creates an uprising. It always consolidates people around a regime, no matter how much they despise it, no matter how evil it is. It's the rally around the flag effect. Even as the Iranian state has grown more repressive, they're still rallying around the flag. There is no internally generated political transformation that's happening. And in fact, the people who are working for a political transformation say their work has now been set back for years or decades by what Trump has done, by the U.S. military bombing them. Now the guys, and I've seen one of these guys making the rounds, and he has been consistently anti-American because of the Shah and that type of thing. He said, I would tell the college students that I teach in Iran, I would tell them what the Americans did with the Shah. I would tell them what happened and why we took over the embassy and all this kind of stuff. And they never would believe me that America was so evil. He goes, they believe me now. And that's exactly what has happened. That's what Trump has done. They handed the Iranian government exactly the external enemy it needed. See, governments will do this many times. They'll manufacture an external enemy by using a false flag attack. That's what our government does. And so they said this unjustifiable war on the Iranian people has undermined decades of social uprising and of people's struggles in Iran. So first we gave them regime change of the Shah. Then that produced the regime change of the Ayatollahs. And then when the Iranian people started to rise up against the Ayatollahs' rule, what do? We come in and we snatch defeat from the jaws of victory for them. This is a reliable product of U.S. air power. Hardened adversaries, devastated civilian populations and infrastructure, and the suppression of the very internal movements that might otherwise produce genuine change. And so when you look at this, what does the U.S., what do we see in the future for us? Well, we have so far been able to, one of the reasons that Americans are so cavalier about war and about the lives of people in other countries is because we have not suffered any consequences for this, except for the people that we remember on Memorial Day who died to support the policies of these presidents. But I think that's going to change. The changing face of warfare is going to change all of that. The vulnerability of our infrastructure is going to change all that. The United States faces a genuine choice. It can continue to reach for air power each time it confronts a government it dislikes, perpetuating a cycle in which bombs kill civilians, harden regimes, destroy internal movements, and leave behind unexploded ordnance for generations of children to find. Or it can reckon honestly with what 75 years of this doctrine have produced. And they can begin building a foreign policy that is grounded not on the fantasy of force, but in the reality of what peace actually requires. Bombs do not build peace. A bigger military does not produce prosperity. For the same reason that we can't tax our way to prosperity. And Donald Trump doesn't understand that either. He thinks we can tax our way to prosperity with tariffs. I was just talking to Lance last night about a guy who he's seen several GoFundMe projects where somebody said, I'm going to manufacture such and such a thing, and I'm going to do it completely domestically here in America. And even if it is something that's very simple, they can't do it. And we were just talking about another one that failed with that as well. Why draw an arbitrary line around the areas that you are allowed to do business with? Why let government do that? Again, Trump sees the world by flags, by his territory, by other people's territory. Don't let him control your life that way. We have to resist that kind of foolish thinking, that kind of narcissistic thinking, that kind of rally around the flag thinking. It has been there from the beginning of the Trump regime with his tariffs and telling us that he's going to tariff us into prosperity. And he's gone from a tariff pusher to a terror pusher, telling us that wars and exploding the size of our already bloated and incompetent as well as inefficient military that can't and won't pass an audit any more than the Federal Reserve will. They are above any of that kind of stuff. And don't you dare try to do it to get a missile through your window of your office. So yeah, Memorial Day, are we a society that can remember and learn anything? Maybe we should call it Dementia Day. That's what I see when I see all of these politicians hypocritically honoring and pretending that they care about the lives of people that they send to go die for their stupid policies. Policies that make absolutely no sense. Policies that would not help us if they were successful. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at davidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. davidknightshow.com.